The last text she sent me was just one word. Okay. No emoji, no punctuation, just a blank, hollow acknowledgement of my daughter's funeral. Rosie was buried at 10 o'clock a.m. on a Thursday. Clouds moved slow. The wind felt wrong, like even the weather couldn't believe what was happening. I stood by the casket holding Rosie's favorite stuffed rabbit, its fur worn down from too many hospital nights and too many prayers whispered into it like it was a second mother. She was 10, just 10, and they didn't come. My sister, my mother, my blood, they didn't show up. No car pulled into the gravel lot, no familiar perfume in the air, no sound of heels on pavement. Just me, James, a few friends from the pediatric ward, and absence. Loud, screaming absence. I had texted Celeste the details 3 days before. I gave her the time, the location, the dress code. Rosie asked for colorful, like a painting. She wrote back, okay. That was it. The funeral started at 10:02. My voice cracked on the eulogy. James broke at the line. Rosie always said she didn't want a sad life, just a short one full of love. And still no one came. It wasn't until later, in the car, when I checked social media that the scream inside me finally erupted. A video, posted by Celeste, smiling, in a house that didn't belong to her, laughing, music playing, champagne flowing, celebrating our big day. She wrote, "New chapter, new home, good vibes only." My breath caught in my throat. My hands went cold. She threw a party, while I buried my daughter. And not just anywhere. In Rosie's house. The home my grandmother left for me. The one Rosie called the blue place with pink tiles. Her favorite color combo. The house we spent summers in. The house we'd planned to return to after her final treatment. I hadn't transferred the deed yet. Too much had happened. Too much pain. But I gave them the keys last fall temporarily. Because I trusted them. Because they said they'd help take care of it. They took care of it. All right. They hosted a housewarming party on the day we lowered Rosie into the ground. I sat there in the parking lot, surrounded by white flowers and muddy heels, watching the video loop again and again. Guests clinking glasses. My sister dancing in Rosie's sunroom. My mother giving a tour like she owned it. And Celeste wearing a dress I once complimented at Rosie's last birthday. I didn't cry. Not then. I scrolled down. Read the comments. So happy for you. This place is beautiful. You deserve it all, babe. And then one from someone I recognized. Wait, wasn't today the funeral? No reply. I put my phone down, closed my eyes, inhaled, and felt something shift. Not break, not collapse. Shift, like grief was giving birth to something else. Not rage, not revenge. Clarity. They thought I'd be too shattered to notice, too broken to respond, too polite to fight. They forgot grief is a weapon when pointed in the right direction. So I went home. I sat in Rosie's room, the one untouched since she left us. I lit her favorite candle, the lavender one, and I opened the drawer where I kept every important paper I hadn't dared to face in months. Birth certificate, hospital records, custody forms, and finally the deed. Signed, unfiled, mine. The house was never theirs. They just treated it like it was. And suddenly, my hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, gripping the edges of every document like they were lifelines. I called my lawyer. His voicemail picked up. "It's time," I said. "I want the house back. And I want it now." Then I walked back into the living room, sat beside James, showed him the video. He didn't say anything for a long time, but then he reached for my hand and whispered, "They're done." We watched Rosie's candle flicker, and I made a promise I knew I'd keep. They skipped my daughter's funeral, so I'd make sure they never had a place to return to. They skipped her goodbye, and threw a party in her place. But they forgot I'm still her mother, and I'm still alive. I used to think people didn't show up because they forgot, because they got busy, or overwhelmed, or afraid of saying the wrong thing. But when it happens over and over again, you learn, absence is not accidental, it's strategy. When Rosie first got sick, my sister sent flowers. Once, a week later, she posted beach photos with the caption, "Mental health comes first," and I understood something then that I didn't want to accept. My pain wasn't convenient for her. The calls stopped. The check-ins faded. Even Mom, who always claimed to be there for family, started changing the subject every time I brought up treatment costs. Don't dwell on the bad stuff. Kids are stronger than we think. You're just overreacting again, Rowan. Overreacting. That was her favorite word for me. When Rosie lost her hair, I shaved mine with her. Celeste called it dramatic. When we cancelled Christmas because Rosie's white blood cell count crashed, my mother said, "Well, you didn't have to ruin it for everyone. I wanted them to change. I hoped they would see." But all they saw was their own discomfort reflected in my grief. I remember one day, in the middle of Rosie's second round of chemo, I sat in the hospital hallway holding a bill I couldn't pay. I texted my mom, "I need help. Just $300 to cover this medicine." She replied 2 hours later, "You shouldn't have had a kid if you couldn't afford one." I didn't respond. What do you say to a mother who thinks your child's illness is your punishment? I carried it all in silence. Because silence was what they trained me in. Because I thought being the bigger person meant swallowing the poison and smiling through it. But the day they missed Rosie's funeral, something snapped. Not a breakdown, a release. They weren't absent by accident. They chose not to be there. They chose not to hold my hand at her bedside. Not to sit beside me in court when the insurance denied coverage. Not to help with gas or groceries or even a kind word. And now I saw it clearly. They didn't just abandon me. They erased me. And Rosie, my daughter, who never hurt a soul, who brought light to people who didn't deserve it, who drew pictures for her nurses, who whispered jokes through oxygen tubes, who asked me, 1 week before she died, "Mom, do you think people remember you better if you ray good or if you ray loud?" I didn't know what to tell her. But now, I do. They remember you when you stop giving them the silence they feed on. So I began to speak. Not with a microphone, with action. I called my grandmother's lawyer, asked about the deed. He confirmed what I suspected. It was never finalized. You're still the sole legal owner. They've been squatting, technically. Squatting. In Rosie's memories. In her light. In a house they never built. I asked about recourse. He told me the options. My hands stopped shaking again. I opened old emails. Found the one where Mom promised to help with utilities in exchange for staying in the guest room. There was no mention of ownership. No signed agreement. No rights. Just entitlement dressed as generosity. And then I found the bank statements. I'd linked our shared family account to pay hospital bills. She'd been siphoning money out during Rosie's treatments. Little by little. Withdrawals labeled gas, groceries, cleaning supplies. Gone. I printed the statements. Highlighted the amounts. I was building a case now, not in court, but in my own mind. Because I didn't need to prove they were cruel. I needed to stop pretending they weren't. I kept the documents in a folder labeled reversal, because this wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. They'd been allowed to write the story for too long. The narrative of the difficult daughter, the too sensitive sister, the one who made everything about her. But not anymore. This story was mine now. Rosie's. Ours. And we weren't going to be footnotes in their celebration. They skipped her funeral to throw a party. They raised glasses while I lowered a coffin. They played music in the home she called her sanctuary. And they thought they'd get away with it. But when people show you who they are in absence, you have two choices. Beg them to return, or lock the door behind them and reclaim everything they tried to take. They didn't just fail to show up. They rewrote the story without us. But this time, I'm holding the pen. Rosie loved that house. The blue one with the crooked fence and the pink bathroom tiles that shimmered when the sun hit just right. She used to say this house feels like it remembers me. And maybe it did. I remember the first time I took her there. She was 5. Ran barefoot down the hallway like the floors had been waiting for her. We slept on a mattress in the living room the first night. No beds yet. Just dreams. Rosie whispered, "Can we stay here forever?" I told her, "Someday, baby. This house is yours too." I meant it. But after she got sick, we had to move closer to the hospital. So I handed the keys to my sister and my mom. Temporarily. Because I trusted them. Because they said they'd take care of it. Because they promised Rosie would always have a place to come home to. They threw a party instead. The morning after the funeral, I walked into that house. Let myself in with the spare key they forgot to change. And I barely recognized it. Gone were Rosie's drawings from the fridge. Gone was the sunflower rug she picked out herself. Gone were the ceramic birds we painted together on the windowsill by the kitchen sink. In their place, white marble coasters, gold-rimmed glasses, rose gold shelves and fake plants in corners that used to hold laughter. The house was louder now, but emptier. It had been redecorated like we never existed. I stood in the doorway of Rosie's old room. Her name used to be on the door in glitter letters, now painted over. The walls were beige. The closet was empty. On the floor sat an empty champagne bottle. Next to it, a single gold balloon that had started to deflate. They popped her presents, drank over it, celebrated themselves in the very place my daughter called safe. I felt the floor move under me. Not literally, just the sensation of everything I believed slipping out from under my feet. They didn't forget her. They erased her. And worse, they did it smiling. I walked through the house room by room. Open cabinets, checked drawers. No sign of Rosie. No sign of me. No photos. No toothbrush. No trace. Just perfect lighting and their voices echoing from a Bluetooth speaker I didn't recognize. I sat on the edge of the tub in that pink-tiled bathroom, ran my fingers over the grout lines Rosie used to call sugar stripes, and made a decision. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder. Reversal. Called my lawyer. We're moving forward, I said. I want the house back. All of it. He didn't ask why. He'd seen the documents. The deed still in my name. The texts. The video. The withdrawals. He just said, "It's yours." Legally and now, finally, emotionally, we filed the notice the next morning, officially revoking their access, setting the eviction in motion, locking in the paperwork they thought I'd never have the strength to finish. I sent it with a note. Just one line. "You forgot who this house belongs to." But I never did. I didn't wait for their reply. I didn't need to, because I already knew how people like that operate. They confuse kindness for weakness, grief for permission, but they forgot Rosie lived here, and she never asked anyone for space. She just filled it with art and music and fierce, undeniable joy. They were just guests, trespassers dressed as family. A few days later, a friend from the neighborhood sent me a photo. A group of women in cocktail dresses leaving the front door looking confused. A sign on the gate, "Private property legal notice filed." The caption read, "Looks like the party's over." I saved the photo, printed it, wrote one word on the back, "Closure." Then placed it in Rosie's memory box alongside her bracelets, hospital beads, and a birthday card she made me with crayon hearts and the words, "You were my always." The house didn't need to be hers physically for her spirit to live there. But now, it could be both. They called it a housewarming. I call it trespassing. They toasted to a future they built on stolen ground. I'm not taking revenge. I'm just reclaiming what was mine from people who never deserved it. They wiped her from the walls, but they forgot the foundation still remembers her name. And now, so will the court. Grief taught me how to whisper, but betrayal taught me how to speak. And now, I was done whispering. The eviction notice was served on a Monday. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that hums in your bones. The officer handed the letter to Celeste as she stood barefoot on the front step, sipping iced coffee from a rose gold tumbler. She blinked at the paper, smiled at first, like it was a prank. Then her face twisted. "You can't be serious." The officer didn't blink. "You've got 7 days." Then we changed the locks. She turned to Mom, who had just walked out with a tray of lemon bars. The tray shook. So did her voice. "Rowan wouldn't do this. But I would." I already had. I watched from my car across the street. Windows up. Engine off. The deed was in the glove box. Not for proof. Just as a reminder that I wasn't crazy. I was right. They stood on the porch arguing with a man who didn't care about their excuses. The officer nodded once, turned left. And that's when Mom looked around. Like the world had betrayed her. Like the camera she always played for had been turned off. I drove away. Slow. Calm. But inside, my heart wasn't quiet. It was marching. They called me that night. 5 missed calls from Celeste. 3 from Mom. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because silence at the right moment says everything. 3 days later, they were still there. Buying time. Posting cryptic quotes online. Celeste wrote, "Some people will betray you when they don't get their way." Watch the snakes shed their skin. I laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't feel like bitterness. Just relief. Because it is easier to heal once you finally stop hoping for honesty from people who only speak in masks. Day 5. The house was quiet again. No parties. No posts. Just 2 women packing boxes in a house that was never theirs. Then, Day 6. 1:27 a.m. The phone buzzed. My security app pinged. Motion detected front entrance. I opened the video feed. Celeste, hair wild, eyes blurred with rage, a baseball bat in her hands. She swung. Glass shattered. Once, twice. The front window. Rosie's sunroom. She screamed something. I couldn't hear it over the cracks. But it didn't matter, because the video was already recording, already backed up, already emailed to my lawyer with the subject line, "Trespassing plus vandalism evidence urgent." 20 minutes later, she was in cuffs. Blue and red lights painted the porch. Her screams went from rage to panic. Mom stood beside her, begging, "Please don't press charges. It's a misunderstanding." But there was no misunderstanding, just entitlement hitting its final wall. I filed the restraining order the next morning. My lawyer delivered it with a straight face and a silence I respected. Because at some point, even legal systems understand, this isn't about property, it's about protection. The locks were changed, the alarm reset, the broken glass swept up by a service crew who didn't ask questions. They just looked around and said, "This place feels heavy." I nodded, because grief soaks into drywall. And betrayal hangs in the air like smoke long after the fire is gone. A week later, I stood in the entryway for the first time since the eviction. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and closure. The pink tiles in the bathroom still shimmered. Rosie's sunroom, empty now, was quiet, but not silent. I lit her lavender candle, opened the windows, let the breeze move through the space like a blessing. This was ours again. They didn't steal the house. They borrowed the illusion of control until I remembered who I really was. Not the quiet sister, not the fragile daughter, but a mother with nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. They thought I'd be too broken to act, but I was never broken, just waiting. They shattered windows thinking it would scare me, but all it did was prove they were never meant to be inside in the first place. Graves don't echo, they absorb, and for a long time, I thought Rosie's grave had swallowed my voice with hers. But it didn't. It just held it until I was strong enough to speak again. I visited her one morning after the storm. The sky still gray. Her name etched in polished stone, worn smooth at the edges from my fingertips. Someone had left a bouquet. Not me. Not James. White lilies. A note attached. "We miss you, sweet girl." Signed, C+M. They hadn't visited the hospital, hadn't sat beside her bed, hadn't watched her fingers curl around the floor. But now they were sending flowers. I didn't cry, just smiled the way you do when someone lies to your face but forgets you were there the whole time. The next day, a video surfaced online. Celeste again, tear-streaked face, shaky hands, a caption, "My sister turned on me during our hardest season. I'm not perfect, but I never deserved this. This was supposed to be our house. Family is supposed to forgive." 10,000 views in 6 hours. Comments flooding in. "How could your own sister evict you? Some people grieve by destroying others. You're so strong for speaking your truth." I watched it twice. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to see how far someone could stretch a lie without snapping in two. And then something happened. A comment, quiet, buried, began to climb. From someone named Elena M. "I worked in peds oncology. I remember Rosie. Her mother came every day, held her through every scan. Where were you then?" Then another, from our old neighbor. "That house was her daughter's. Everyone here knew it. That girl brought light to the block." Then the nurse from hospice. "You said you miss her. You never visited. Don't you dare use her name for sympathy." And suddenly, the comments shifted. The algorithm turned on her. Not because I asked it to, because the truth doesn't stay buried, not even in grief. The video was taken down by morning, but the screenshots lived on. I didn't say anything publicly, no post, no rebuttal, because when the world starts speaking the truth for you, silence becomes sacred. But inside, I felt it, a settling, a grounding, not victory, not gloating, just something deeper. Vindication without bloodshed. James hugged me that night, tight. "I've never been more proud of you," he whispered. And still I couldn't help but return to that one image. Rosie's name, the white lilies, the note. I burned it, quietly, on the back porch, in a dish we used to fill with wildflower petals and dandelion wishes. Because not all gestures are sacred. Some are performance dressed as repentance. Later that week, my lawyer called. "Are you still sure about donating the house?" I didn't hesitate. Yes, Rosie would have wanted it that way. The paperwork was simple. Transfer of ownership, a foundation for pediatric cancer support, a home that would now house families facing what we did without the betrayal we endured. I signed the final document in Rosie's old bedroom. Sunlight hit the wall just right. And for a moment, I swore I heard her giggle. The deed was mailed. The locks were changed again. This time for good. A week later, I got a letter from the foundation. Inside, a drawing from a child already living in the space. A crayon rainbow. 2 stick figures holding hands. Captioned, "This house feels happy again." I placed the drawing beside Rosie's photo. They looked like they belonged together. They tried to weaponize grief, but the truth came anyway through nurses, neighbors, and strangers who remembered what real love looked like. I used to think peace came with fanfare, like a curtain call, or applause, or a sunrise so perfect you know everything was finally over. But peace doesn't knock. It slips in when you're rinsing teacups, watering plants, folding laundry without crying. I moved out of our apartment 3 weeks after donating the house. Not out of pain, but evolution. It was time. The new place was small, a bungalow near a quiet street. Rosie would called it a storybook house because the roof dipped like something drawn by hand. The walls were soft blue, her favorite. I painted the porch pink, because now I could. Because no one could tell me what memories I was allowed to honor. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, 1 box each day. On the 7th, I opened the one labeled Rosie Keep. Inside, her sunflower pin, her hospital journal, a bracelet she made me, letters crooked, but clear. Mama Brave. I hung it on the doorknob to my studio. I started painting again, not to escape, but to stay. Stay in this version of me that had come through hell carrying light. Neighbors brought cookies. One child from next door, 5, maybe 6, left a note in crayon. "Your flowers are the prettiest. Your house smells like hugs." I framed it, not because it was art, because it reminded me of the way Rosie once described her favorite days. They smell like warm air and soft hearts. Every Sunday, I hosted a small circle. Mothers, widows, survivors. We sat on the floor, shared stories, cried sometimes. Not to stay in the pain, but to give it a name so it couldn't eat us alive. Celeste never called again. Neither did Mom. Not after the truth spilled like sunlight over the lies they tried to bury. Last I heard, they moved to towns over, trying to rebuild their version of events in a place that hadn't watched them fall. That's fine. Let them perform. I've retired from the audience. The house I gave away now hosts families in treatment. Kids laugh there again. A nurse sent me a photo of a new mural painted in Rosie's sunroom. A field of wild sunflowers and a girl with short curls running toward the light. They don't know it's her, but I do. Sometimes I sit on my porch and talk to her, not because I believe in ghosts, but because grief needs somewhere to go. I tell her about the support group, about the boy who made a candle for his sister, about the woman who finally said his name out loud after a year of silence. I tell her about the child next door who brings me dandelions like their currency. And sometimes, I just sit and listen to the wind and hope it carries my love somewhere she can feel it. People ask if I've forgiven them, my mother, my sister, and I tell them the truth. I didn't need to forgive them. I needed to outgrow them, and I did. Forgiveness is not a door you hold open for people still throwing stones. It's a key you give yourself to walk into rooms they'll never enter. Peace didn't ask permission to arrive. It just did, in quiet ways, like fresh coffee, a clean room, a soft laugh after weeks of silence. It didn't feel like a trumpet. It felt like exhaling without shaking. On Rosie's next birthday, I made lemon muffins. Her favorite. No party, no speeches, just 3 candles, a song, and a whisper into the wind. I'm still here, because of you. They took my daughter's funeral and tried to turn it into a stage, but the spotlight doesn't belong to them anymore. I turned it off, lit a candle, and chose peace instead.